I should probably did this last time. Hang on. Oh, cool. All right. Paper one. What in God's name is that noise? Okay, everybody heard it. It wasn't just me. So, all right. Paper one. Source text. Any assigned Fairchild poem. I brought the book with me today because I like books. But I mentioned last time all the poems we're going to read. I think there's only maybe 4 or 5. I'm using my memory here. Not a lot. I've typed them all up. I've put them on CourseDen in a section called Fairchild. So I hope that's pretty self-explanatory. So you don't have to buy the book. You of course can. You won't, but you could. But anyway, this is what I'm pulling from. A book called The Art of the Lathe. You pick one of those poems, and we're going to talk about all of them. And you write about it. The paper you turn in on the, oh no, I didn't update the due date. That's my bad. I don't know the due date off the top of my head. Does anybody? Nobody knows? It's on the syllabus. I updated it there. I don't know why. I must have uploaded the wrong copy. That sucks. Anyway, that's something I get to check when I get to my office. It's about a month. I give you guys about a month, so we got time. We're going to talk about all the poems. You're going to write me at least 3 pages, not counting the works cited. What does 3 pages mean? Because sometimes you guys get cute. If you're on the top of the 3rd page, how many pages have you written? 2. Look at that. That's easy. If you're sniffing the bottom of the 3rd page, like I'll give you a couple lines, you know, if you're short, I can roll with that. That could be 3 pages, okay? But get pretty close to that bottom of that page. I think we can all do it. Percentage of grade, 25%. Format, MLA. We're going to review that in a second. Get excited. And then as I mentioned, the due date is incorrect. Bummed about that. That's on the syllabus. All right.
September 1st.
September 1st. We'll solve this mystery at some point. It's a while. We got a while. And no one is going to start their paper today. I firmly believe it. So we'll figure it out. What the assignment is, we're going to spend a couple weeks talking about this, practicing this. We're going to start today. But basically, and we kind of did this last time, if you remember. Do you have your hand up, sir? Okay, don't worry about it. If you remember, Autumn Begins in Martins Ferry, Ohio. We talked about that poem last time. We dove into specifics. We talked about word choice and some of the crazy things he was saying about the world and the perspective of these people in this place and time, right? Something that we probably don't know. I don't know anything other than what's in that poem, to be quite honest, about Martins Ferry, Ohio in 1959. I got no idea what life was like, right? Outside of that poem. But as short as that poem is, I think it does a pretty good job of giving you a lens into it, right? What their world is like. Our job with these poems is to do something similar, okay? You're going to read these poems. We read Old Men Playing Basketball for today. To the best of your ability, you think about what goes on in the poem, anything stand out to you. Again, we're going to practice that. And what, if anything, it might tell you about the place and time that it comes from. The people in it, what they're worried about, or what motivates them to make the choices they make, things like this. The way I sum this up, I always ask this question. What does the text say about us as a people, society, or culture? Okay? Before we can do any of that, I'm going to bring up the lights. Well, I'm going to try. There's a lot of switches over here. I'll talk to you about a couple things. I kind of wonder... Ooh, that's a good one. All right. First thing, I have a picture. There will not be many illustrations in this class, but this is one. Some people are visual thinkers. This is not my theory. This is a very famous theory. So famous, I forgot whose it is. But it's very famous. Just trust me on that. It's this idea that art creates culture, but also culture creates art. It's a loop, okay? So, any films you might see. For instance, this is recent enough. Most of you, I imagine, saw some or all of the Avengers movies, right? kind of hard to escape that. I've seen a couple. My wife made me. They were fine. They were made very recently. They're made by people, and you sometimes forget that. Good movies will do that. You'll forget that this is a made thing with a huge crew and a director and writers and actors. Like, it's a huge millions of dollars time spent project, right? The people made this thing. All those people are from our culture, right? If it's an American film anyway. And so they bring to the table their own perspectives, their own motivations, but we share in a lot of those, okay? And it informs the art. It just does. You can't divorce yourself and what you make from your own perspective, okay? But then the trick is that art gets seen by, if we're talking about Avengers, what, millions and millions of people? And it shapes you a little bit, just a little bit. But think about all the movies you've ever seen, or all the Netflix shows you've ever binged, or God help us if you've ever read anything ever, right? All that stuff shapes you just a little bit every time. And so it works like this, okay? So when I ask you today, at some point, you probably won't have an answer, but I'm gonna ask you, what does this say about us as a people, a society, a culture? This is what I'm talking about. This guy wrote this poem we read for today, and he's from us. He's older, and he's very white, and he's almost dead. If he's not dead already, he's very old. But he still comes from a similar enough place to us to kind of represent us in a way, okay, in his art. And that's what we're talking about, okay? The other thing we're going to do very, very briefly, because this is asinine to be honest with you. Oh no. The marker's too strong. Okay, hang on. Is there another? Of course not. Awesome.
On the bottom.
What happened?
There's 2 on the bottom.
No, well, yeah, I mean, I'm gonna get it work. I need like a blowtorch or something to take this off. No more of the blue. It was too good. Oh my God, there's a brown over here. I've never seen a brown dry erase marker. All right. This is gonna be boring, but it's gonna be quick. Suppose, for example's sake, you're writing a 3-page paper. You need to format that paper according to MLA guidelines. Any idea what that means? I'm curious. If not, we can talk about it more, but I don't think anybody wants to do that. How do you set up your paper for MLA? Does anybody know some of the doodads? What's up?
Name, date, and everything on the left side, and then you have to have like the.
You have your name, my name, date,
Course.
and the class. English 1102, whatever our section number is.
And then at the top right of the page, on every single page, your last name and page number.
Last name, page number. And there will be an option in whatever word processor you use that should update that. You insert page number at the top and it'll change as the pages go. Good? And we need one more thing before we start.
Double space.
You should double space times your Roman 12 and you need a title. You guys normally roll with rough draft. That's what you usually do. I wish you wouldn't, but you will. And then you write me some paragraphs. What is that? Intro, body paragraph 1, body paragraph 2, 3, you got your conclusion. There's your paper. Are we missing anything?
Citation page.
A works cited. That'd be that next page, and it will also be boring. We won't talk about works cited today, so don't worry about it. But you title it, works cited, centered, and then your entry, you'll only have one for this paper, will be the inverse of a paragraph. Paragraph, you indent the first line, and then no others. Works cited entry, you do not indent the first line, and every subsequent line gets indented. I'm bored just saying that. Any questions about MLA? Good. Let's see if this is a little easier. Oh yeah, that's much, much better. I don't know what's going on with blue. Okay. Let's talk about the poem. Oh, this is why I told you to pull up Corsten, by the way. If you have not already, please, please pull up the poem, Old Men Playing Basketball. So I'll bring them back around here. I told that to turn off, and yet it did not. That's interesting. Please. Okay. All right. Does everybody have it up? All right, so there's a couple things you got to do when you're going to talk about a poem. First thing you got to do, what do you imagine that is? It's not a trick question. Thank you. So let's do that. Old men playing basketball. The heavy bodies lunge, the broken language of fake and drive, glamorous jump shots slowed to a stutter. Their gestures, in love again with the pure geometry of curves, rise toward the ball, falter, and fall away. On the boards, their hands and fingertips tremble in tense little prayers of reach and balance. Then, the grind of bone and socket, the caught breath, the sigh, the grunt of the body laboring to give birth to itself. In their toiling and grand sweeps, I wonder, do they still make love to their wives, kissing the undersides of their wrists, dancing the old soft shoe of desire? And on the long walk home from the VFW, do they still sing to the drunken moon? Stands full, clock moving. The one in army fatigues and house shoes says to himself, pick and roll, and the phrase sounds musical as ever. Radio crooning songs of love after the game, the girl leaning back in the Chevy's front seat as her raven hair flames in the shuddering light of the outdoor movie. And now he drives, gliding toward the net. A glass wand of autumn light breaks over the backboard. Boys rise up in old men, wings begin to sprout at their backs. The ball turns in the darkening air. Second thing we got to do, we got to make sure we understand the thing. First of all, old men playing basketball. What's it about? This is the easiest question I'll ever ask you.
Old men playing basketball.
Thank you. Yeah. It's pretty much what it's about, right? Let's go stanza by stanza, though, just to make sure we don't miss anything. To remind you, stanzas are basically the paragraphs in poems, okay? So this one has 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 stanzas. First stanza, heavy bodies, jump shot slowed to a stutter, all that stuff. What's going on in the first stanza? If you could sum that up. What are we looking at?
Build again.
The game's going on. What's that game look like?
All to play basketball.
It is a struggle, right? It sounds hard. Okay. Second stanza. They rise toward the ball, but they falter and fall away. You got fingertips and prayers and grinding. What's going on in the second stanza?
Trying to get the ball.
Yeah.
It never.
It's more struggle. Yeah. Physical hardship. Well, it sounds like somebody should stop a little bit. Third stanza, basically the same thing. So the first half of the poem, thereabouts, is just these old men are playing basketball and damn, it looks hard, right? That's kind of it. Well, to stop us real quick, that seems pretty important to the speaker, right? One thing we could file away. You don't always know why you take notes when you take them, okay? But one thing you might notice, first 3 stanzas of this poem, he is really focused on how hard it is for these guys to play basketball. So 2 questions immediately arise. One, why are they playing? If it's so hard for them to do, shouldn't they stop? Right? That's a question worth thinking about. The other one is, why is he so concerned with it? He's paying a lot of real estate in this poem. It's a short poem. Almost half of it is, man, that looks hard the way they're playing this game. So why is he so concerned with it? That's another question we might have if we were taking notes. Fourth stanza. Now we're talking about wives and dancing and walking home from the VFW, which I assume none of you looked up. Good. Specifically, foreign wars, most famously the World Wars, II especially. So he's implying these guys are old enough to have done what?
Fought in the war.
Fought in World War II. Okay? So they've seen some things, right? But that was a long time ago. They're old now. They can't even get a jump shot up without screaming or something. Okay? Next stanza. Where are we in fifth stanza? Where are we, do you think?
Someone's home.
Huh?
At someone's home.
Nope. You say that because of house shoes?
Yeah.
Nope. But it is interesting then, if we're not at somebody's house, why are they wearing house shoes? We'll talk about that. Where are we in stanza 5? There's a pretty clear indicator near the top of that stanza. Huh?
Walking home.
Nah, girl.
Outside.
No.
In the gym, still.
How do you know?
It says the stand's full.
Yeah. So here's what happens. And again, it's very quick. It's so quick you can miss it, okay? That's why I spend a second on it. In stanza 3, the bottom half of stanza 3, the speaker asks himself a question. He says, I wonder, right? We're going into his head. And so that next stanza with the wives and the dancing and all that, that's still in the speaker's head. He's asking himself questions about these old men, okay? He's still in the gym, he's still watching the game, but we're kind of diving into his thoughts for a second. And then very quickly we dive right back out with stands full, clock moving, right? But it's real fast. Okay. So we're back in the gym, and we see one of these guys who's playing, finally. We didn't really see him before. He's wearing army fatigues and house shoes, which is a hell of a uniform. What are house shoes? Slippers. Not the best bet on a basketball court. So that might be worth thinking about if we were taking notes. Like, why is this dude wearing house shoes? And the fact that the speaker notices is also interesting, right? Points it out to us. Another way to think about poems is everything on the page, the poet / speaker decided we needed to see it, right? We're getting weirdly intimate real quick. If I'm a speaker in the poem, I'm talking to you and no one else when you read it. So I wanted you to know this guy has army fatigues and house shoes. I wanted you to know that. And the question becomes, why? Why is that worth telling, right? All right, we're almost done with this part. Now we got a radio and a girl and a Chevy. What is going on in this penultimate stanza? Penultimate, SAT word of the day, means second to last. You can take that with you. Where are we in this penultimate stanza with the radio and the girl and the Chevy? Doesn't sound like we're in the gym, right? Huh?
It's after the game.
It's after the game, but is it really? Like, do we picture these old men and what we know of them, and after the game, like, let's go catch a movie, hottie? And get in the Chevy and whatever. Is that what's happening?
Like a flashback.
It's in his head. Again. And it's quick. I don't even think he really tells us this time. He just goes there. So he's kind of envisioning this for these old men when they were what? And now it comes to you. When they were what? Younger. Again, not, sometimes students get confused here because it's so fast. So I just want to be clear. This is not grandpa catching a flick with his lady. That's not what's happening. Okay. You had your hand up, sir.
He signifies it as he says the phrase sound. So he's hearing that pick and roll, and that's what he's envisioning. by
Good.
saying-
But I'm saying it's fast. It's so fast. Okay, good. Last stanza, and then we can move on to actually talking about the thing. What's going on here? We got a guy gliding toward the net. We got autumn light breaking, boys and rising up into old men. It's just kind of the end of the game, right? We kind of fade out. It seems like the ball turns in the darkening air. Yeah. Okay. All right. I want you to take a minute. This is how we start our analysis, okay? Take just a literal minute, look back over what we've read, today, do you notice anything that seems like it might be interesting? This is what we did last time with Martin's Ferry. Anything that stands out to you as odd or maybe worth investigating? Take a minute. We're going to talk about it. Anybody come up with anything? Yeah. What's up?
Is
Oh,
the
no.
entire poem takes place during a single jump shot?
I wouldn't go that far. I mean, I think a game is happening. Yeah, because a couple things go down. So I don't.
I guess I saw like jump shots slow to a step in the first stanza.
Yeah, and then they go for the rebound.
Yeah.
So I mean, there's things happening. Like, I don't think it's a long time in the game, but especially in the second and third stanza, it sounds like he starts describing the game very generally. So it's hard to really pin down how much time is passing. But I'd say more than that, you know. But all right, what do you have over here?
The last stanza is when he mentions the old man being described in back. It's like he's alluding to like them being angels.
Don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do that. That happens every time. It's not your fault. I took a knee. It's all the students before you who said that, and now you're part of a tradition. But look, here's what I'm gonna say: is what you're offering possible? Yes. Okay. But just like we talked about with Martin's Ferry last time, to the best of your ability, you then got to reinvestigate the poem and think about, is there anything else that kind of substantiates that claim? If it's just one line, you gotta ask yourself basically, am I taking a leap here? I would say yes, for this reason, okay? I know they're old and they're gonna die soon. That's kind of what, yeah, I get it. But I think what's actually happening, think about the context here. Boys rise up in old men, wings begin to sprout at their backs. We have kind of two options here. It could be he's evoking some kind of angelic imagery because, you know, they're not long for this world. That's how being old works, by the way. Or, what does it mean that boys rise up in old men?
They feel young again.
Good. I'm gonna tell you this, and I can't show you because I'll go through this ceiling. If I jumped right now, I don't quite have the same ups I used to. I used to play basketball when I was about your age. I know it doesn't look like I used to do anything, but I used to. I played every position, point guard to center. I was bummed when the guy would put me at center because, look at me. But I could dunk. Like, I know that's weird. I could jump really high. I can't do that anymore. I don't have it. It's just not there. Okay? And if I somehow did, I'd have to come down again. My knees don't want that. Okay? Boys rise up in old men, especially they're playing basketball. It's a game about elevation, right? And they're thinking now they feel it for just a second when they play. They feel young again. It's almost like they have wings, right? Age is all about wearing down. It's all about getting closer to the earth, literally and figuratively. It just is, okay? But for a second when they're playing, according to the speaker, they feel young again. And he just says it in this very poetic way. Would be what I would offer, okay? If it was just wings beginning to sprout at their back, I think you would actually have a better case, okay? But it's joined, like he doesn't even give us a period, it's a comma. It's joined to the boys rising up in old men, right? But good eye, that is an important line. Okay. Anything else you guys noticed? Okay. Well, now I'm just going to do my thing. There is And not every poem is like this, by the way, so don't get this twisted, okay? Not every poem is like a scavenger hunt, but we're gonna do one right now. There is a single line. To be totally specific, it's technically 2 lines, but it's really 1. There's a single line in this poem that I would argue is more important than any other line in the poem. Unlocks the rest of the poem. Changes totally how you read the poem. Because we said at the top it's about old men playing basketball, and it is, but it's also about something else. Does anyone have any idea what this super weird line is? I'll give you a hint. The speaker is just watching these old men play basketball and is commenting on it, right? I think most of the poem makes sense if that's your understanding of it. The line I'm talking about is hella out of left field.
Did them to grind a bone and suck in the hot bread to the sun?
No, because again, I mean that's all struggle, right? Does he say it in a way you're not used to because it's a poem? Sure. But on a fundamental level, it's just, man, that looks hard. So that makes sense. That totally makes sense. Yeah.
Their gestures in love again with pure geometry of curves.
Again, that's just a super poetic way. I mean, you never thought about it that way, but if you ever watch basketball, especially, it's all geometry, right? And it's all beautiful. The way the ball and the players, it's kind of elegant in a way. So again, he's just being a poet there. Yeah. You got to say that with your chest. What? Yeah. What's his wives' business? Is the power forward like? Is what? No, right? What does he ask about their wives? This is what's important.
Do they still make love to their wives?
You know when you're watching people play basketball and you're like, I wonder if they still get down. That's normal, right? Exactly. Here's my point. First of all, it seems at least, given what you guys have offered to this point, you all read the poem and none of you like caught for a second with, why is he talking about this? All of a sudden? This is weird, right? When we stop just now and look at it, this is damn weird. So that tells me you got to read a little slower, just a little bit. And or maybe read the thing twice. I'm not going to ask you to raise your hands, but if I did, I would probably be pretty bummed out with how many of you didn't read this thing twice. Read it twice. Read it one time so you understand it. Read it again to just look around, see what stands out. Do these guys still get down? Should stand out. Let's talk about it. Oh, let me turn this because I hate everything about this room. All right. He says, I wonder, comma, right? A couple things about poems. First of all, there's lines, right? There's line breaks. These offer certain opportunities that prose do not. I can high five her right now, it kills me. She's cutting through my brain. So what I'm saying to you is, all on its own, I wonder, do they still make love to their wives? That's weird. That's weird. But consider where we break. You can make an argument that this isn't his real question. What's his real question?
Their wife's still alive.
Do they still feel young?
Because I'll tell you this way. When you read poems, it takes you a split second to get back to the beginning of the next line. So just for a second, as you read, you only read this. The point I'm making to you is, again, weird question with to their wives. But because we break on love, he kind of sneaks in an original version of the question, you could say. Okay? So he asks this. How's that different if we take the wives out? I think the question changes. Before it was, I wonder, do they still make love to their wives? again, you, but like, okay, whatever. But now it's, I wonder, do they still make love? Why is he asking that question, do you think? How does that even arrive in his brain, right?
So we're talking about basketball, like they still love basketball, like even if they're like hurt and stuff.
Well, we're on the right track. How does he get here? Logically. Yeah, there's a logic to this. Yeah.
Alright, it's maybe pretty far-fetched, but
Okay.
I'm thinking that they're like playing like with so much love for basketball.
No. It's so much easier than you guys are making it, I promise you. What does the game look like?
Just like pain, like,
It just hurts physically.
do they still?
So then, why is he wondering if they still get down? What's he really asking? He sees them playing basketball, and it's a huge struggle, a huge physical struggle. How does his head go to, I wonder if they still have sex? Yeah, can they physically do it? That's what he's asking. And look, again, weird question, but at the very least, there's a logic to it. It makes some sense, right? Okay. So now what I want you to do, just for a second, okay? You went through the poem earlier. A couple of you found a couple things. That was good. I want you to consider this, though. Almost dead center in the middle of this poem, the speaker wonders if they still get down. These guys playing basketball. If you were better trained in poetry, and it's not your fault, it's the school system you grew up in. But if you were better trained, what you would then do is go, man, that is weird. I'm going to have to file that away in the back of my head and go back through this poem and see if that connects to anything else. Does it change, and I've already kind of told you, does it change how we read the poem? Basically what I'm going to ask you, do you see any other language that maybe reads a little bit differently now? Now that we know this is on the speaker's mind, okay? Take a second, look through the poem, you might start to see what I'm talking about.
So the part that says, do they still sing?
Well, read through the poem. Give everybody a chance. Anybody find anything? We had one in the back. I guess I'll start with you. Dude, what were you starting to say earlier?
Do they still sing?
Do they still sing?
Yeah. Like the first one is, do they still make love? So the next one is like, do they still sing? And it says, to the drunken moon. Like,
How do you read that differently now with the sexy stuff?
because it's like kind of, I guess, interpreting if they are still like as maybe as joyful as they were.
No, I'll give you like joyful and youthful for sure.
Yeah.
Because again, the older you get, the less you sing. Because you're like, fuck that, I'm tired. Yeah, but it's not quite. You'll see what I'm saying. But yes, in the same ballpark, perhaps. In the same, no. But okay. What else? Nobody found anything. Oh, this is gonna be fun. Okay. Okay. I'll just lead you through some of the greatest hits. That's a good one to start with. Somebody mentioned this earlier. The grind of bone. That's a weird line break. We got making love after that. What about their gestures in love? We got a line break there. What would a love gesture even look like? I can only think of a few. We can't talk about it. It's not that kind of class. Right? The line immediately after that. Their gestures in love again with the pure geometry of curves. On its face, a really beautiful way to talk about basketball. But he's talking about whether or not they get down a couple lines after this. And we're talking about the pure geometry of curves that they're in love with. not just talking about basketball in this poem. We're talking about fucking. That's what this poem's about.
Why is the narrator watching?
Why is he so interested? Why is that on his mind? That is the big question, right? Has to be. He's super invested. Look, I'm gonna give you another one. This is my personal favorite. Well, top 3 at least. On the boards. Not everybody understands this because it's kind of a basketball term. What do we when we talk about boards? What are we talking about? They're rebounding. It's backboard. On the boards, their hands and fingertips. What's going on? Other than basketball? Headboard. Yeah. This is a dirty poem. Okay. There's another one. You guys didn't do it, so I have to do it. Do they still make love to their wives, kissing the underside's line break? Whoa. That is a big line break. Some of you look at me right now like I wrote this poem. I did not write this poem. All right, calm down. The point I'm making to you is, do I expect you to see all these things, especially on the first real day of class? No. No. But it's in there. Okay? Let's go a little further. So I mentioned to you, I wonder, do they still make love, line break, to their wives? We didn't spend a lot of time on it though. Fundamentally, he's less concerned with what?
The game.
Well, yeah, that for sure. But concerning this line break, what could you argue, given the line break, what could you argue he's not concerned with? The wives. They're going to get a lot of short shrift in this class, unfortunately. It's a class about masculinity, 20th century masculinity, and historically women don't. Sorry. But it's part of the narrative. So this dude, I'm pretty sure he's a dude, watches these old men play basketball, watches them struggle. He's like, do they still fuck? That's what he's worried about. He's not worried about their wives, he's worried about them. And the question is why? So we're going to file that away for a second. Why is he so worried about whether these guys get down? Correct?
He's gonna turn another one day.
Good. We're skipping ahead, but we can do that. Because he's going to be old one day. Right? So he's kind of looking into his future. So now what we've really learned is the speaker is deeply concerned with his own sexual ability, right? Sort of as he ages. So when he says, do they still make love, you could almost substitute, will I when I'm their age? So again, that gives us another question of, why? Why is he so worried about this? Right? All right, so we're going to file, that's our new question. Why does he care so deeply about whether or not he's going to be able to throw down? I want to take you to that penultimate stanza. Now keep in mind, anytime we're not at the game, okay, in this penultimate stanza, we are not at the game. Anytime we're not at the game in this poem, we are in the speaker's head, okay? But, and I forget, I think it was somebody toward the back earlier, said this is, they called it a memory, right? Because it's written that way. This sounds like what these guys would have done when they were a good deal younger, right? Importantly, we don't know that because this is all in the speaker's head. So what is this really, this penultimate stanza? It's what for the speaker? I mean, no, he's imagining it for them. But what is it then? It's not his memory. It's not their memory. What is it? We got words for this. What is it if you imagine?
Fantasy.
Yes. And that carries with it certain connotations, does it not? But he's kind of fantasizing a little bit about what life must have been like for these guys when they were young. Maybe they had just got back from war, or they were going to go to it soon, and kill a bunch of people and do what young guys do, right? It's a fantasy, this penultimate stanza. And if we're trying to answer that question, why is he so deeply concerned with whether or not he's going to be able to be sexually active when he's older? I think checking his fantasy file is probably a good start. So, Radio crooning songs of love after the game. That's pretty self-explanatory, right? Radio's on, some kind of love song. We've all, look, by the way, I wasn't alive then either. We've all seen movies though. It's like the 30s, and it's like, whatever the fuck they listen, right? It's that stuff, okay? The girl leaning back in the Chevy's front seat, so they're in a car. As her raven hair flames in the shuddering light of the outdoor movie. We gotta stop here real quick, it's 2022. I don't know what you know. Where are they? Good, all right, they're at a drive-in movie. It's not something we really do very much anymore. But back in the day, okay, they had them. I want you guys to look back at this stanza, and I've already told you, I've already helped you a little bit. Those first two lines pretty much mean just what they say. Not every line in a poem is going to be something you can dig into as much as we have some of the other ones, okay? But I've eliminated two of them for you. What I'm interested in mostly, those last two lines. Is there anything we could maybe talk about in these last two lines in this penultimate stanza? Yes, ma'am.
Why he splits like when they're driving and then it goes back to the end.
Okay. That is absolutely worth talking about. We're going to build to it. We got to say one more thing before we get there. But yes, good. That's an interesting line break. What about the line before that?
The one that says in the shuttering and then breaks where it breaks the light.
Did anybody have a reading of that? As her raven hair, that's just a fancy way of saying she has black hair. As her raven hair flames in the shuddering light of the outdoor movie. Literally, I mean, look, you ever like been in the theater and you like go to the bathroom or something and you come back and you see the audience looks crazy because the way the light is shudders, you know? He's describing that, okay? But as we've talked about repeatedly today, that's kind of an interesting line break. She's leaning back in the Chevy's front seat. Her raven hair flames in the shuddering. What might he be talking about? At moments like this, I can't tell if you don't know or if you don't want to say. Are they watching the movie? No. Okay, good. So we're on the same page. As her raven hair flames in the shuddering, again, this is his fantasy. This is not necessarily real. This is what he imagines these guys must have done just all the time, right? In the shuddering light of the outdoor movie, and now he drives, gliding toward the net, and we're back in the game. But before that, we were in a car. We were at a drive-in, okay? There was some shuddering going on. And then he's driving. Where's he going? Huh? This is an important question. We're going to spend a minute on it. Where's he going, do you think, when he's driving?
I thought he was back in the game line, he was like driving.
It's both. It's a segue from the fantasy back to the game, and that's going to be important too. But segues, there's two sides to them. Okay, one side is the game, and we got that. We know what it is to drive. Most of us, you drive the lane, right? Like we get that. Okay. There's a thing before that though in the fantasy. He drives. Where's he going? What do you think? I've talked a whole lot about stuff that probably makes some of you uncomfortable today. Where is he going? Is he driving anywhere like this? No. Some of you are smirking, so we understand what the driving is. Okay. That makes the rest of the segue very interesting. For this reason. There's shuddering going on. Dude's driving, and you're like, God damn, that's pretty intimate, okay? Gliding toward the net. Well, now we're back at the game. What is the guy doing in the game? Gliding toward the net. What's he doing? He's going for a layup. Sometimes students say he's going for a dunk. I'm like, have you been paying attention? He's going for a layup. This is joined to that previous scene. Okay? Might that matter? and now he drives, gliding toward the net. What is a layup? For anyone who may not be super into basketball, what do you know about a layup? What kind of shot is it?
It's pretty close off the back.
It's easy. You get made fun of, you miss one. It happens. It's one of the first things you learn when you're able to do it. Like my 7-year-old can't really, he can kind of do it when he's lucky, but God help him if he can dribble. Like it's just, but it's one of the first things when you really actually start playing, you learn how to like bounce it off the thing, you do a layup. Okay, it's an easy shot. You might even say sometimes, "Oh, how's that class?" "Oh, that's a total layup, right?" It's not like we have that language. So I ask again, does it matter the way this Segway is built? And now he drives, gliding toward the net, in parentheses, for a layup. What might that be implying about this girl? She's easy. She's a layup. That's fucked up. Now, what is this? Remember, it's not a memory, it's a what? It's a fantasy. So he's sitting here in the stands, he's watching them struggle, he's like, do they still get down? And then eventually he gets to his fantasy of what their lives must have been like when that wasn't even a question, because things were easy, girls were layups. You just went to a drive-in and then things happened. Aha. We've learned next to nothing about these old men, to be perfectly clear. We know physical things are hard, but I think we knew that before the poem. We've learned some things about the speaker and kind of what's on his mind. And we got to the question, well, we got to the assertion, first of all, that he's deeply concerned with his own sexual ability as he ages, right? Okay. And he also seems to have an opinion of what young masculinity looks like when it's like working properly, right? Because we see his fantasy here at the end. Why is this guy so wrapped up in sex, do you think? His, specifically. Even though he's talking about other people. He's really talking about himself, right? Why do you think he's so worried about it? Because it's the whole poem. The whole poem is all through there, right? You're not sure? Yep, what's up?
They used to play basketball, like, as they've aged, it's changed.
I'm not sure if you're speaking metaphorically or not.
Like, maybe he's worried that, like, when he was watching the game,
Uh-huh.
he sees how much they've aged and how he's imagining how they used to play, and then...
Again, real quick, are you speaking metaphorically when you say how they used to play?
Well, I'm kind of trying to...
Well, to be perfectly clear, this poem is about basketball, but it's not. It's about
Yeah.
fucking.
So,
Okay.
like, it's like he's trying to go back or go through it as basketball.
Right.
And he's trying to imply that they used to, be young.
They used to cross people up. They could do it all, right?
Yeah, and
Yeah.
he's trying to envision that.
Well, but again, for him, think about how he talks about these guys. This is kind of piggybacking on you a little bit. The language, the tone he has in that penultimate stanza, in that fantasy, right? It's almost like, oh, must have been so great to be those guys, right? Like it kind of has that wistful feel to it. Think about the first 3 stanzas. Again, that's about basketball, but it's also not. And how hard that sounds and how awful it is. For the speaker, the penultimate stanza is where these guys once were, right? And the first 3 stanzas is where they are now. Why does this matter to him like this? That it was so easy for them before, supposedly, and now he wonders if they even can. Like if they're capable. Why does he care, do you think? This is the part where we enter into theory. We're very close to trying to make an argument, by the way. The one you might write a paper about. You thought about it?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
You mentioned like masculinity, and I
Yeah.
think if like not only is he afraid of old age, but he's afraid of losing that masculinity of that. I'm assuming at that time, like I'm supposed to be able to throw down or whatever the case may be, and the fact that I'm losing that skill is like, am I even a man now?
Isn't that part of the stereotype? Like we have, and I'll check the time. We have this notion of like being physically capable and what have you, but it's also, if you get really into somebody's head like this guy, it's also kind of tied to sexual ability, and they're not the same thing, but again, they're very closely related. Yeah, I think he defines these guys, their masculinity, according to whether or not they can, and thereby he defines himself, right? That's why he's so worried about it. We have this line. What goes on the next line? What's basically number 2 in his priorities list? That's not a trick question. What's after this line? To their wives. So they get the second spot. He's worried about them. He's just not as worried. They're not as important in his head. He's more worried about number 1. All right? That's some evidence we could use to begin to argue. Obviously, the poem's not just about basketball, but it's also not just about sex. It's what sex is for the speaker, why it matters to him as much as it does, because it's all through the poem, to the point where I would say he's maybe even anxious about it, right? Another section that we alluded to much earlier, but I think we can talk about it a little bit better now. In the 5th stanza, okay? We're coming out of, again, almost like one of his fantasy type things where he's saying when they were young, they used to sing to the drunken moon, you know, stuff you do when you're young. Stands full, clock moving, all right, so we're back at the game. The one, so this is the only old man we see specifically, like with detail. The one in army fatigues, line break, and house shoes. When I said much earlier that everything, I was looking at you and it's probably real awkward. Everything I say to you in this poem, I'm saying it to you, so I want you to know. Another way to think about that is the way the poem's built, okay? So everywhere a line breaks, I decided to break it there, okay? That doesn't always matter, but sometimes it does, just like this one, okay? So for instance, the one in army fatigues. What are army fatigues? Does anybody know? Anybody have an idea? Yeah, but it's like, it's kind of like army leisure wear, I guess. You know? I don't know all the rules. I have buddies that were in, but like, I think you can only wear them when you're off base or something. I don't really know, but it's, you'll see him sometimes. A dude will like walk into a gas station, and he's not in uniform, but he's very clearly in the army. You know what I'm saying? That's probably fatigues. Okay? It's like that. So he's in army fatigues. Let's talk about this for a second. Just for like a microsecond before you get to that next line, I think you're allowed to have certain assumptions about this dude in army fatigues. What are some assumptions you might have about a guy? Like if a guy just walked in the door right now and he had that stuff on, you would make some assumptions about him, right? What are some of those assumptions?
He's falling overboard.
Potentially. I was so worried you're going to say he's in the army. I was like, thank you. But that's a little better. That's a little better. Yeah. Okay. What else? We all do this, by the way. You have no other expectations or assumptions about this guy in this army getup. None at all.
He has like some stories to tell.
Maybe. What kind of person is he? You just assume this. We all do.
Good person.
Define that a little bit better. Like, what qualities do you...
Well, I would say thank you for your service. You know.
Yeah, well, so we have this idea of like sacrifice, duty, right? Like you have a sense of duty, right? For sure.
Patriotism.
What'd you say?
Patriotism.
Potentially, yeah, probably, yeah. What's this dude like in his day-to-day? Again, we make these assumptions immediately.
Wakes up real early.
Yeah.
Drinks his coffee.
She's a go-getter,
Yeah.
yeah. What's his house or apartment or whatever look like?
Very clean.
Pretty organized? Yeah. Very disciplined, right? We got all these assumptions kicking around. And then the next line, and house shoes. I think that changes things a little bit. Dude's got army fatigues, okay, and he's got slippers. I don't know why. This is something about me. I always picture him as bunny slippers. You do whatever you want, but like, house shoes are very different if we're talking about how we read that, right? Especially on a basketball court. Slippers on a basketball court? What might that mean? The house shoes, do you think? Again, if you saw a guy on a basketball court, especially wearing house shoes, what are some assumptions you might make about him?
I don't care.
About what?
Basketball.
In what way? Like, I mean, I'm not just, I'm trying to get a little more
Not
specific.
like competitive about it. It's like he was.
Okay. Again, he's not trying to cross anybody up. He's not making any quick moves. Right?
Kind of showed up kind of thing.
Why do you say it like that?
Because like, I mean, maybe he didn't plan on going to play basketball. He just kind of.
It doesn't seem like this was part of the plan
Yeah.
because he didn't have real shoes. Yeah? Yeah?
He just showed up because he had nothing to do with it.
Maybe so. Maybe so. Yeah. Well, and the other way I thought you were going to talk about that is, what are slippers? Why do people wear them? They're comfy. They're comfy. Why does that matter for this guy in army fatigues? What do army fatigues not connote? Comfort, for one. That sucks. That's not comfortable. What's this issue with comfort? These are veterans. Another thing we talk about a lot in this poem actually is war stuff, right? It's kind of in there a lot. They're veterans. He's got army fatigues, but his feet are cozy. Why might it matter if we could start an argument? Yes, ma'am.
It's like showing he's no longer strong.
Yeah. And again, isn't that a weird thing? And again, I have to say this occasionally because it's 2022. In no way are any of us saying this is how the world should be or anything like that, okay? What we're saying is it kind of is the world we live in, though. A lot of people think this way. We have an association between levels of comfort and strength. You want to be like a really strong dude and it's raining outside and he doesn't bring an umbrella, right? Because he's a hard ass. Like that, we got that. But when his feet are cozy, all of a sudden, what does that do? We have a word for this. For sure. It's not the word I was after, but for sure. Good. If the army fatigues are very masculine, just to like go ahead and lead you here, then we kind of unavoidably read the house shoes as what? Yeah. In the context of the poem, they feminize this character because they're cozy, because that's the shitty stereotypes we have, right? And again, remember, all of this is coming from the speaker, and we know what he's worried about. But now we've just much more closely tied it to this question of masculinity. We have a character, the only character we actually see in the poem. We get a couple other people, but they're all made up, right? They're part of the speaker's fantasy. The girl, by the way, in his fantasy is the girl. She's not a girl. That might matter. Fantasy doesn't work without, the girl. You need to what does she look like? She's got black hair. Okay. Anything else? Nah. Anyway. I was going to make a point. I forgot what it was. Oh! So now we understand that sex for the speaker is much more than that. And I think we've started to maybe prove it's tied to this question of masculinity and how he measures it. In later editions of this class, because I think we're almost out of time. What time is it? Sweet. Yeah. In later editions of this class, we'll move a little bit faster, right? We're going to keep doing this work. But to kind of try to wrap it up today a little bit, if we had more time, we would dive into sort of trying to build body paragraphs out of lines and prove smaller pieces of this argument. So for instance, I'd say the first 20 minutes of us talking about the poem was, is this just about basketball? And it's like, no, it's actually about old man fucking. It's like, okay, that's upsetting. That'd be a body paragraph. You have to prove that. If you had a buddy read this And they're like, what's this poem about, you think? I was like, I think it's about old man sex. You'd be like, nope. So you'd have to prove that. You have to prove that. And then in a second or third paragraph, you'd have to attach that to something, because that's not really enough for a paper. Well, as it turns out, there is more to it. And maybe, and it has to be maybe, because this is how argument works, maybe the speaker is so concerned with the sexual ability of these old men because he's worried about himself. Maybe that's another paragraph. Okay. The paragraph after that has to be the ultimate question. Why is he so worried about it, though, even if it's just about him? One option. There are others. We don't have time today, so don't worry. I've watched some of you fade over the last 10 minutes, so like I'm trying to wrap up, okay? One option was, it's kind of indelibly linked to how the speaker thinks about masculinity. It's very old school kind of mentality that we absolutely still have, by the way. And you can talk about the guy in house shoes. You can talk about the way the speaker fantasizes about sex with the girl and their wives kind of relegated, to this status. And all of a sudden you have a paper. 3 pages doesn't have much more room than like 3 body paragraphs. Don't get too excited. I know the aquarium's getting up. We're going to be out of it. It trips me up every time. What I want to ask right here, and I mean this, I will do this all the time and you guys will never participate. This is important. Are there any questions at all about anything we talked about today? Anything you're confused by? Anything, maybe you came in today and you're like, I thought the poem was about this. Anything at all. Anything at all. I told you wouldn't participate. Okay. For next time, I'm going to go to my notes because I don't trust my memory. Oh, we were supposed to talk about citations, but you guys are checked out. No. We'll do that real quick, then I'll let you go. How about that? It'll be a reward for paying attention. All right. To there. This will be the last thing we do. When you're citing poems, okay, and you should, because we're writing about poems. If you want to pull, say, these 2 lines for your paper, first of all, you would do this, okay? Please double check to make sure you quote correctly. You guys don't always do that. You're pretty rapid fire with your quotations. Go check the poem, man. The words matter, okay? Anybody know what else we might need for this citation? We need a couple things. Good. Quotation marks. What else? Inside of. Good. So at the end here, his last name is Fairchild. Now, we also need line numbers for poems. There's 4 in each stanza, so 4, 8, 12. So 12 to 13. It would look like that. Right? And if you're ever worried about that last one, go ahead and make it 13. That's fine. Yes?
Do you want like what stanza it's from?
No. You only need line numbers. That's all you need. I'll go ahead and tell you too, there's a couple longer poems we're going to read at the end. I'm not going to ask for Body and Soul and Beauty. If you write about either one of those, don't worry about line numbers. Because Beauty is like 6-7 pages. I don't want anybody having to count those lines. I'm not a bastard. Anyway, we'll talk about that later. All right. So this is your citation. This is what it looks like. We need one more thing. And then I'll let you go. People looked up at that. Anybody know what else you need when you quote something?
Citation page.
You need to work cited. Yeah, that comes later. Could I just drop this quotation in a paper? Is that how that works? My last class said that. You guys will never use commas in your whole life. You're like, Freud, it's a comma, bro. We need some context. We need to know how we arrive at this quotation, especially this one. How did we get here? Context matters, okay? The example I like to give, if you leave this class and a friend of yours is like, oh, how was your weekend, blah, blah, blah. It's like, it's good, what about you? It's like, dude, I saw a body. And you're like, excuse me? What would your immediate question be? Where? Every time. You're like, where? Because context matters. If they were like, I saw it in the drive-thru at McDonald's, you're like, holy shit. Conversely, if they're like, well, actually, I started work as an undertaker, so like, I see bodies. You're like, that's a really weird way to go about telling me that. Like, that's part of your job. It's a screwed up job, but like, yeah, context matters, right? What's the context of this quotation? How do we get to this? There's your comment. Watching the titular, that's just an adjective that means it's in the title. Old men struggle on the court. This is our context. Is he watching a game of basketball? Yes. Could we get more specific? Yeah. This is how he gets at that question. He watches how hard it is on them. And his brain goes, huh. That's how it happens. You want that context because in your papers or in your homework, you'll pull some quotations. Okay, if you have good context, you can talk about this too. This matters. Anyway, your homework. You got to read Little Boy. It's another poem by this guy. It's on Coursera. And an explication. All an explication is, for our purposes, is what we did today. Okay? You can do it with old men playing basketball, or you can do it with Little Boy. It's up to you. But what happens in the poem, literally, and then to the best of your ability, what else is happening in the poem? Could you give me a couple lines? Could you talk about, oh, I think this means this, and this ties into this bigger idea that the speaker is grappling with? You see what I'm saying? All right. I'll see you next time. Thank you.